Hello and welcome to yet another edition of your weekly international current affairs program, Globewatch, from the Cameroon Radio Television with me, Charles Ebune. It was presented as one of the most successful regional economic communities in Africa. I'm talking about the West African Economic Community, ECOWAS, today challenged by the creation of a rival group at the wake of military takeovers in West Africa. Will the alliance of the state of the Sahel work and do the job that ECOWAS has not done for nearly half a century now? My guest today on Globewatch is a refined professor of international politics and political science, Professor Emmanuel Pondi. Welcome to Globewatch.
Thank you very much, Mr. Charles Ebone. Thank you.
The dynamics in West Africa of recent have been so much. The latest, the creation of the alliance of the state of the Sahel, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali. 3 out of the 15 members of ECOWAS. Too much?
Too much compared to what? We have to have a reference to say whether it's too much or too little. In fact, it's a rebellious act.
In a single area, you have 3 groupings of regional character. You have the Monetary and Economic Union, you have the Economic Community, and then you have the alliance of...
Well, I think the real question is why the need for a new regrouping, why the need for alliance for Sahel states. I think it's more of a rebellion against an act which was committed by the ECOWAS, which was threatening these 3 states of military attack and military, I would say, compulsory move to do something which they did not want to do. And I think that is what brought this particular act of rebellion and of creating a new alliance which precisely would counter their view that the idea being that there was no legal basis for threatening them militarily. And when you look at the treaty of the ECOWAS Treaty of 1975 and the revised versions 1992 and 93, you see that there's no such thing. And the peacekeeping force which is created later, the idea is really to keep peace within the system, the space, not to attack states. So I think they were really shocked by that and they could not accept it.
Now, the alliance of the state of Sahel says that ECOWAS was supposed to work for the interests of the people, for the communities, that the economic sanctions imposed on them were simply unacceptable. On the other end, ECOWAS says that we all agreed to democratic governance and the transfer of governments through democratic norms, that is elections, which simply means that military takeovers are unwelcomed. Who theoretically has a reason?
I think the least area where you can talk about the presence of the military historically is precisely West Africa, because it's West Africa that started with military coups, as you remember, with Togo 1963, and then there was a series of coups in Ghana 1966. Then you had, of course, Nigeria with an avalanche of coups. So I think the area is very Sierra Leone, Liberia, and so on. So I think that's the area where the notion of coup, military coup, is unfortunately very much widespread.
There are exceptions too, like Senegal.
Yes. Senegal is an exception, it's true. And now there's been a reconstitution of democracy, in a way. But the real question is not that, in my view. It's what kind of democracy are we talking about? Is it imported democracy? Is it local democracy? Is it culturally grounded democracy? I doubt it very much. So I think that the African countries, as of now, should stop just clowning or cloning what is happening elsewhere and ask the real questions. The real question, according to me, is thus: how come that in Niger today, there's been no coalition, endogenous coalition, to ask for the return of the deposed president? How come that it's only in the Western capitals that you hear that call, and not locally?
Well, because the local people are afraid that if they raise their voices, they are going to be crushed, right?
You know,
there is that element of fear to which cannot be taken out.
No, you know, if that was the case, there wouldn't have been a revolution in Iran. Because Iran, they were afraid that the Shah would crush them. And I think he killed more than 1,000. Beyond that, they went on, and he had to leave. So I think that argument, to me, doesn't hold. Because when the people want to do something, they will do it. No matter what the hardship, no matter what the obstacles, at the end they will do it. So to me, there's no real popular will to do that. And it sounds more like manipulation. But I want to say something concerning ECOWAS, which is positive. ECOWAS up to now, up until the SAHEL, Alliance of Sahel States came, was considered to be one of the best working regional economic I would say, institutions in Africa. And they were, you could have your ID from Lagos and go to Dakar with that ID. The free circulation of
the Gambia,
yes, of goods and people was a reality. So it's important to stress that not everything is bad with ECOWAS, but they made a mistake which turns out to be a fatal mistake.
Professor Pondi, from the way you speak, it seems to me that you are with Mali, you are with Niger, you are with Burkina Faso. These three countries simply see ECOWAS today as a puppet organization dictated by what comes from Washington, from what comes from London, from what comes to Paris, which ECOWAS says that no, we have our organic documents that say such a behavior that you are portraying today is out of our norms.
No, I'm with organizations that follow rules and regulations of their own institutions, which was not the case with ECOWAS when they were threatening to actually strike these three countries. And when they were doing that, it so happens that forces of France were in Niger, forces of Germany were in Niger, and forces of the United States were in Niger.
There are Russian armies too that are equally coming to the area.
Yeah, but I'm saying
it doesn't change.
Yeah, but I'm
much.
saying the Russian army are not. They were not in the decision-making process at the time, as we saw with France, for instance. That
were French soldiers part of the deciding process?
But they were. I mean that the threats were coming from where? Basically, from the French president. That's a reality. We're not inventing anything. If you go back to the history, you will see that he was with the president of Senegal. They were working in unison, threatening together. So maybe because there's some uranium interest of France. Don't forget that 34% of uranium used in France comes from Niger. So that is understandable from a geopolitical standpoint. But from a political standpoint, they did make a mistake by threatening, using the last. It is the last threat level which they used, not the first, which should have been first to concert with them, to maybe put some sanctions, which are lighter sanctions, rather than go to the utmost threat, which is a military threat, which they used.
Well, you said that they made a mistake. How do you solve the problem? Is it by creating a new regional bloc that excludes the others, or sitting on the same table like it seems to be happening during the last ECOWAS summit in Abuja, Nigeria? The new president of Senegal, Bassirou Diomaye Faye, clearly indicated that they need to take the cliche which ECOWAS is attached to now. And maybe if they take that out, will it work? And by the way, what are the cliches? What you were talking about?
The problem as it stands now is a problem of credibility and a problem of lack of dialogue. So what you have now is two...
ECOWAS is no longer credible, a problem of confidence among the institutions and the leaders?
In the theory of conflict resolution, when you want to have discussions, you must have a credible mediator. And you must also have credible actors who trust each other. Despite the differences, they trust each other, meaning that the foundation is still there for negotiation or for exchange. I don't believe that that is the case now. I think that the three states did not even dare respond to the correspondence, to the letter, to the mail of ECOWAS. When ECOWAS sent a mail to the three capitals, telling them that now they're going to weaken the sanctions, they're going to take them away, the three states did not respond, which means that there's not even a dialogue. There's not even some kind of
They are non-reaction. Is that logical?
It's not logical, but you cannot blame them from thinking that they have nothing to do anymore with ECOWAS. That is the message, that we have passed that level, we're no longer with you, and we don't want to have any continued conversations or exchanges with you.
How does this play to the idea of African unity? You are one of the best experts on the continent when they talk about African unity.
You cannot have African unity by threatening other African states, by one state by another, or a group of states against other states. That is not African unity. So African unity must also be based on taking into consideration of our own ways of doing things. You cannot tell me that in the whole of area of West Africa, there's no indigenous way of settling disputes. There are. You cannot go to that area, which is a huge area, because Mali is 1,200,000 square kilometers.
The whole of that area is about
nearly
Niger
6 is 1 million
kilometers square.
So it's a huge. They have designed throughout the years and ages their ways of settling things, settling disputes.
Like what happened in Rwanda with the
Gachachas. You cannot continue to rely on a resolution of a Security Council, resolution of only the AU and so on. You have to blend it with the local ways, which make more sense because they are rooted in the culture of a land. That we don't understand that, and we continue to have make the same mistakes.
The whole dynamics are taking place within a well-defined economic and political context on the continent. We are talking of the African Continental Free Trade Area. ECOWAS, before the split with the creation of the new organization or regional bloc, whatever name you want to give it, was roughly 450 million or 20 million people. The largest country, of course, in terms of population being Nigeria. When you look at the mechanism of implementing the African Continental Free Trade Area and you see all these divisions that are coming in, does it help in that economic dream of the continent?
No, I think once again,
when people don't even talk to each other by correspondences.
No, I think we should not mix things. You are here in the middle of confrontation, okay? It's an ideological confrontation.
Okay.
It's not only an economic confrontation, it's an ideological confrontation.
Okay.
What separates the three states from the rest of ECOWAS as it stands today is far beyond economics, in my view. It is a worldview that rejects what they consider as neocolonialism.
As you know, Prof, yeah, of course you explain, as you know, ECOWAS was just one single passport system. You know that now that the others have left, there will be new passports, you will need visas and whatsoever. I'm just trying to get this clear because I saw Dangote saying the other day that he needs 35 visas across Africa for him to do business and that it is a catastrophe. You see where I'm heading
But the free trade area approach has only been conducted in a half-hearted manner, in my view. Okay. Because what is missing there is the accompanying package, which is they should have a transcontinental language, which has never been implemented. How can you conduct business from Cairo to the Cape and from Dakar to Mombasa? How many languages? We need to implement by necessity. Why on earth are we so resistant to learn an African language for instance, such as Swahili, that can help us to link up with the 1,400,000,000 Africans. I just don't understand that frame of mind. Because you cannot have commerce, you cannot have trade, if you don't control the language, because it's your investment. You don't invest in a land in which you don't control the language. It should not be a non-African language. It should be an African language. And all that is a construction. It should go with the package of the free trade area, in my view. And I think that is one thing that is missing. Now, when you talk about the fact that there's more dissension, there's more disunity, I don't buy that. I don't think that is necessarily the case. Why? Because we need to assess African evolutions, African developments from an African standpoint for once, and not continue to assess Africa on the ground of foreign constitutions written and drawn up outside of Africa and imposed on Africans. And I think this is precisely the movement which is being now observed in Africa, that enough of that kind of way of approaching things.
There are some African countries that have had most of their constitutions written by most Africans. Well, of blessed memory, Professor Joseph Owona wrote the constitution of so many countries, and I believe that those countries did not equally provide the best of stability. You know what I'm talking about. So it's not only a matter of accusing the foreigners.
It's not because an African writes a constitution that it has an African inspiration. Human rights started where? With the Mandate Charter of 1236 in Mali. It is time that we tell the Africans that. The first day of a reign of Sunjata Keita, that's when that human charter was read. I gave the date, 1236. And it is a triple charter. It's a charter about human rights, about animal rights, and about nature's rights in one document.
A kind of inspiration of the 1948 Universal Declaration of Human Rights, right?
It's the 1948 human rights, which is an inspiration of the
That's what I'm saying.
Mandate. Yes,
yeah.
But how many Africans know that? How many people know that? So the people come to lecture us about human rights and long-standing, how do you say, sustainable development. This is like a provocation. You cannot come and talk about sustainable development to people who have lived like that their entire lives. So I think there's a need to really contest certain approaches, which now at the basis of the problem. It's not just an economic performance issue.
You have written extensively about personalities of the region, including late Burkinabe President Thomas Sankara. When you look at the Malians, when you look at the people of Burkina Faso, when you look at the people of Niger, under which mindset are they found today to make ECOWAS completely useless? Okay,
I think it's the shadow of Thomas Sankara that I see. And his idea of self-reliance, basically. That's what I see. Don't forget that between 1983 and 1987, Burkina Faso was able to become a country that is self-sufficient in food needs, which was almost unthinkable, but they did it in 4 years. So I'm saying that it is that spirit that I mostly see. People say, okay, they are leaving from Western dependency to go into Eastern dependency. I say, I don't see that, because they haven't read the speeches of these people. They don't know them. They don't care to see what the populations of Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso think. They only bring their own ideological ideas, which they put into the mouth of these people. And I think this is very dangerous. We need to have more respect for the Africans. And when the Africans say enough is enough, we don't want to go that way. It's not normal to try to push them, nevertheless. I think that the people of Mali or Niger or Burkina Faso, they have the right to say, we don't want to be in that coalition anymore.
This year, of course, marked 20 years of your teaching at the Diplomatic Academy in Vietnam. Probably you should be the first African to have such a record. How has the experience teaching in that school been?
Well, the Diplomatic Academy of Vienna was created in 1754 as a Prussian Austro-Hungarian Empire Institute training diplomats for the big power at the time. It so happens that I went there in 2004 to give a conference on the training of African diplomats, because there was I would say there's a union or reunion of directors of academies, of diplomatic academies, and directors of School of International Relations, which meets every year, alternatively in Vienna or in America at Georgetown University. So I was invited to talk about the training of African diplomats. It's after I've delivered that talk that the director of the Diplomatic Academy approached me and said that they don't have any lecture on Africa, any full-fledged lecture on Africa, if I wanted to teach there. I said, yes, I'm always willing to bring in the African touch.
What actually have you been focusing on, and if you have to estimate the number of people who have listened to your lectures over the past 20 years?
Okay. The lectures are two lectures, basically. One is conflict resolution in Africa, and the other is dynamics of African integration. You see, these are two different topics.
Absolutely.
But they deal with the most important topics which we have to deal with in Africa. African integration, which is economic, which is cultural, which is, I'd say, which has a lot of perspectives. And then you have conflict resolution. How is conflict resolution conducted in Africa? Why is it successful sometimes? Why isn't it successful other times? And what are the dynamics? Well, who are the actors? Which are the institutions that deal with that kind of ideas? And what are the approaches which are non-African and which are African? I blend all that to show to them that, in fact, African juridical order is not the same as the Western juridical order. In Africa, when there's a problem, the emphasis is never on who is right and who is wrong. The emphasis is on how to repair the social fabric so that you have a symbiosis, which is societal symbiosis, and societies goes together again. That is the issue. Yeah. But for them, it's not that. For them, it's First World War, which countries won, which country lost. And then the one which have won the war imposed their views on the loser, to the point of, in fact, humiliating the loser. The African conflict resolution approach is not like that. When you have lost a case, which is a traditional case, for instance, the loser is more taken care of than the winner, in order not to lose face. So we have other approaches. And in Africa, the unit of analysis, societal analysis, is really the community, not the individual. Okay. Whereas in Europe or in the West,
have you taught roughly who have benefited from such?
Every year, each course has around 25 students every year. Each of the courses, and they come from Russia, they come from Austria, they come from Sweden, from America, from France, from British, and also from Cameroon, Ethiopia, South Africa. They come from, I would say, around maybe 45 countries, 50 countries altogether.
Okay. What was your last lecture on? I know that you are just returning. And how was that unique to mark the 20th anniversary of your teaching at the Diplomatic Academy?
I was privileged to be asked to deliver what they call the 20th anniversary Jubilee lecture at the Academy, at the the most prestigious venue there, in front of not only the current students whom I'm teaching now this year, but the students who were there since 2004. And I saw many of them because they work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs.
Some of them are even ministers today. Some
of course, many
prime ministers.
Many ambassadors and ministers.
Yeah,
just like in IRIC, most of the ones that I taught here have gotten to those levels now. And I was very happy to see them because they came from all over Europe, in fact, to come to listen to that lecture. And the title of the lecture was precisely the dynamics of state building and state disintegration. The example of the Sahel states, Alliance of Sahel States, which I took. And that lecture was an opportunity for me to say that that area, which is called West Africa, is not a barren area, historically speaking. It's an area that saw strong, rich, solid empires. And I showed them that the Ghana Empire, which was there in the 9th century, was very rich, very prosperous.
The Malian Empire?
And then it turned into, that was...
Somanguru and others?
And then the Malian Empire, the 14th century, and then which turned itself into the Songhai Empire of the 16th century. So from the 9th century to the 16th century.
The Songhai Empire.
The Songhai Empire, which is really the entire length and breadth of that West African. So I wanted to tell them that they're not dealing with a place that has no history, with a place which is new. My question is, what difference is there between African states and states in Africa? Are they the same? African state may have a more historical, anthropological cohesion that states in Africa. So I think they were very surprised to hear that the richest man on earth of his time was Mansa Musa, 1326, in gold value. And I always insist on in gold value, not in other terms of references.
And with that, we conclude the interview. Professor Emmanuel Pondi, the current Vice Chancellor of the ICT University, former Director of the International Relations Institute of Cameroon, and a graduate of the Cameroonian, UK, and United States classrooms. Thank you very much indeed for being guest on the program. And congratulations on the 20th anniversary teaching at, it should be the world's oldest school of diplomacy, right?
Yeah, academic.
Academy.
Yes, academic.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.